Cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Wesley. This is Wu Can Cook. Today we're doing a Chinese dim sum dessert. It's probably one of the more popular Chinese dim sum desserts because it's deep fried. It's called a Jian Dui. It's probably more colloquially known as like a sesame rice ball. The way that I have always described it is essentially a fried mochi ball. So if you know what mochi is, mochi comes from Japanese cuisine, obviously. But it's very similar because it uses a very similar type of flour, which is using glutinous rice flour. And essentially what we're going to be doing is deep frying that rice ball and then coating it in some sesame seed. Actually the other way around, so we're going to coat it in sesame seed and then deep fry it. And then it gives, we're going to fill it inside with some lotus paste, which looks something like this. So it ends up being kind of like a sweet dessert that is like filled with a sweet paste. So today we're using lotus paste. It looks like this stuff. If you've never had lotus paste before, it also is like more commonly done with red bean paste, which is a very, very similar flavor. I personally like the lotus paste mostly because I think that the lotus paste is a little bit easier to work with because it's like a little bit more dense, so it makes it a little bit easier to work like into a ball shape, which is kind of like the biggest problem with dishes like this. But also because it's like a little bit sweeter too. So I think the real main reason that I'm using lotus paste today is because it's just easier to work with. But if you have any questions for me, feel free and drop your questions in the chat. I don't know everything about Jian Dui, but I know lots of stuff, so hopefully I can be helpful or informative, or at the very least fun to watch. Today we're doing a little bit of a different thing. I know normally I would start off by chopping stuff because pretty much everything that I cook is generally a stir fry when I cook it on stream. But today we're actually doing desserts because I wanted to do one. It's also, the reason that we're doing this today is because this is the recipe that came out over on my YouTube channel a couple of days ago, so last Friday. Every Friday there's a new recipe that comes up over on that channel. This one is the one that came out last Friday, which was... Oh yeah, it was part of a larger series that we've been doing in homage to all of the restaurants that are here in the Oakland Bay area. This one comes from a dim sum place here in Oakland called Gourmet Delight, which recently closed, which kind of sucks. Hermina, yeah, happy Monday, how's it going? Scott, wife's noodles. Oh yeah, I'm not really sure what those are. That's a good question, I'll have to look it up. You don't know what to do with them though. Yeah, that's my problem with a lot of noodles. The problem with not knowing what to do with noodles is that if you treat it wrong, it just completely falls apart. Which I've done many times. So definitely you want to try and figure that out. But yeah, sorry, I've never heard of wife's noodles. It sounds very interesting. Cool. So what I'm doing right now, we're starting off with the sugar element of our batter. So what we're going to do is we're going to develop our mochi batter. I guess you could call it a mochi batter. What we're going to do is we're setting up that batter. It's going to have a little bit of sugar in it, which is this brown sugar right now. And then we're going to fold that into our glutinous rice flour. So the difference being, so this is glutinous rice flour. It looks like this. It's glutinous rice. It is very, very similar to mochi flour. Has a couple of key differences that kind of, in my opinion, are not that important. And if you're familiar with what mochi flour is, it's essentially what it is. So that's a third cup of brown sugar, and then this is going to be half a cup of boiling water. And then I'm just going to whisk this up until it is dissolved. So our goal here right now is just to make sure that that sugar doesn't have any large granules in it anymore. And that's just going to make sure that we don't fold in any like solid bits of sugar. That ought to do that. Then next what we're going to do, where'd my mixing bowl go? Next what we're going to do is we're going to get to our flour. So if you've ever worked with glutinous rice flour before, you will know that it is very, very different from working with AP flour or like normal wheat-based flour. And the reason for that is because it doesn't receive water quite as well once it's sort of like mixed in. So with say like if we were doing like a pasta recipe, for example, is what I was thinking of when I was doing this recipe. It behaves very differently because like if you were working with AP flour on a pasta and you undershoot the water or you undershoot the flour or you overshoot the flour and it's like a little bit too dry and crackly, you can just add a little bit more water and then it will just fold in and it will still be okay because you can still just add more water. With glutinous rice flour though, it doesn't behave that way. So once it sort of becomes a solid mass, you're really just stuck with that solid mass. So we want to be very, very careful when I'm doing this right now to not overshoot the flour here. So what we're going to do is, so what we're aiming for right now is 1.5 cups of glutinous rice flour. But I'm starting off right now, this is going to be just 1 cup. And then what we're going to do is we're going to fold in that last cup very, very gradually. And that's going to keep us from coming up with a super craggly dough, which is not fun. So that's our first half. What we're going to do is start folding that together. And then as needed, we're going to add this remaining half cup. Like so. So you'll notice that it's behaving very, very differently from how regular old AP flour would behave. We have this like very, very sticky glue. That's partially because of the sugar that we're adding. That was mostly sugar that we just folded in. But partially also because the way that this flour behaves is very, very different. Which I did not know. The first time I did this, I was not aware of that, and I basically messed up the first entire batch of this dish that I made. So I'm just adding a little bit more flour based off of the texture of how this is looking. Once we achieve that sort of texture that we're looking for, which is sort of like loose Play-Doh, how I like to describe it. That's about it. Something like this. We have this dough, it kind of like has this quality about it where it just sort of droops. It's very, very malleable. That's what we're looking for here. We don't want it to be too sticky or too hard to work with because you're not going to be able to roll it out properly. Cool. So next up what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this into 8 separate pieces. So usually what I like to do, at one point I did write down what it's supposed to weigh per piece, but I forgot and I don't know where that is anymore. So what I usually like to do is just weigh the whole piece of dough and then divide that by 8. That's usually the best way to do it, and then we can add that. So this should be about 1 1/4 ounce per piece. Cool. Hello to everyone just joining. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. If this is your first time tuning in, we're here streaming every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 PST. With new recipes out over on my YouTube channel every Friday. Those come out every Friday. So last Friday we came out with a recipe for the dish that we're doing right now, which is called a Jian Dui, which is a Chinese, like Chinese dim sum dessert. And essentially what it is a deep fried glutinous rice ball that's then coated in sesame seed and then has some sweet lotus paste inside. So it's one of my favorite desserts. It's one that I've been eating since I was a little kid. So hopefully, it's also not super complicated either. So hopefully people try this recipe because it is, as far as like desserts go, a really easy one. No complicated baking. Cool, so those are our 8 even pieces. And then what we're gonna do is we're measuring out our lotus paste here. Usually what we're going for is half of whatever the quantity of what this is. So if what we're doing is this is 1 1/4, this should be about a little closer to like 3/4 of an ounce. Usually I just end up eyeballing it because I'm lazy and I don't care. But best part about lotus paste is that it is very easy to work with because it's very thick. So what I like to do, instead of trying to roll the ball into a shape roll the dough into a flat surface, is I like to roll the lotus paste into a ball, and then what we're going to do is fold it into our dough, and then just fold the dough on top, like so, and then give that a roll. And now we have this nice even ball of dough. So one more time. Usually I like to eyeball it. The idea being with the filling is that we're trying not to overshoot it, because if you add too much lotus paste, it will explode in the fryer, which is not going to be good, and then it's gonna basically everything is just gonna go everywhere, which is not good. Also, if you undershoot it, it's not fun either because it doesn't taste like anything. It'll just be like a really disappointing donut, which is not fun. But if you get it right, it should be something like this. It's also a lot easier to work with because you don't have to use a rolling pin, which I love. But if you are more familiar with the red bean paste version, it looks something very similar. And red bean paste does have a pretty similar quality about it if you get the right type. Sometimes if you get the wrong red bean paste, it can be really loose and difficult to work with. You definitely would not be able to roll loose red bean paste like this in your hands, like so. So I'm just adding it to the middle of our dough and then folding it on top and giving it a roll. Yeah. Cool. So one more time, here's our lotus paste. We're going to give it a roll, like so. And we're going to take our dough and then press it in the center and then fold it on top. And then give that a roll. So if you've also ever made mooncakes, it would probably look something similar to this too. Except mooncakes are a lot harder to make because the dough is a lot more complicated. It's actually why I have all of these ingredients too. Once again. There we go. Yeah. Hello to everyone just joining. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. If this is your first time tuning in, we're here every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 PST with new recipes out over on the YouTube channel every Friday. So last Friday, we came out with a recipe for what we're cooking right now, which is a Jian Dui, which is a type of Chinese dessert. If you've ever had like Chinese dim sum, it's probably one of the like more popular dim sums or desserts that come up on the dessert cart. When I was a kid, my dad used to bring them home from Chinatown a lot, so that's how I used to associate with Jian Dui. This one is overfilled. Oh well. If you're looking for those recipes, they always live over on my YouTube channel, which is at youtube.com/woocancook. Those are out every Friday, and then usually every Monday I will be cooking through the recipe that we do every Monday. So last Friday was the recipe for what we're cooking right now. Friday before that I think we did lapchang fried rice. I think that was what last Friday was. I'm kind of losing track. And then what we did was we cooked through that lapchang fried rice the following Monday. And then I can't remember what the other recipes are. I should probably keep better track. I know that katsu donburi was in there at some point. We did some Korean gamjadoram, which is a braised sweet potato. Lots of fun recipes coming up. So if you're interested in stuff like that, definitely find your way over to the YouTube channel and check out what's going on over there. We're live streaming every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday with new recipes every Friday. We're also working our way to 4,500 subs by the end of the month. So if you want to help us hit our subscriber goal, please hop over and subscribe. We just passed 4,000, which is super cool. Unsalted coffee, yeah, how's it going? What a fun username. Who is salting their coffee though? Alright, so there is our 8 dough balls. Next, we're going to set these aside, and the real trick to a Jian Dui is trying to figure out how to get these sesame seeds to stick to the rice balls, which is really tricky because sesame seeds are not very tacky. So if we're following just basic logic, if you roll a rice ball in sesame seed and then you throw it into a deep fryer, it should probably come apart because sesame seeds don't stick to stuff. So what we're going to do in order to make sure that that stuff sticks is we're going to get our sesame seeds very, very wet. And the wetness of our sesame seeds is going to keep everything from falling off in the deep fry. So here's our sesame seeds. That's about like a 1/4 cup or so. And then I'm just throwing it into a strainer and then giving it a little bit of a soak. And then we're going to spread that around on our cutting board. Like so, kind of feels like sand. And then I'm going to roll everything around in it. So if you ever worked with sesame seed before, this should look like an ungodly amount of sesame seed because no one has ever eaten this much sesame seed in their life. But the goal here is to coat the entire rice ball in sesame seeds so that we get something that looks like this. And if you do it correctly, those sesame seeds, you see a lot of them are sticking to my hand right now. They really should be sticking to the rice ball, like that. Coming in hot. Yeah, how's it going? Hello. Hello, everyone. Hello to everyone just joining. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. If this is your first time tuning in, we're here every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 PST. Today we're doing a Chinese dim sum dessert, which is called a Jian Dui, which is essentially a fried mochi rice ball that's then coated in sesame seed. So a lot of times if you come across it here in the States, you probably more colloquially see it referred to as like a sesame ball or I actually don't know. I don't think I've ever seen the English translation of a Jian Dui. But essentially what it is it's got some sweet paste inside. So today we're filling it with lotus paste. But you could technically fill it with whatever you want. You could probably put chocolate in there and it'd be really good. Anything that you want. Probably the most common thing to find inside of it is a red bean paste. Today we're using lotus paste. Mostly the main reason that we're using lotus paste is because I like to use it because it's a little bit easier to work with. It has like a little bit more dense texture, so you can like roll it around in your hands and things don't like sort of fall apart, whereas red bean paste is a little bit harder to work with. If you have any questions for me, feel free and drop those questions in the chat. I don't know everything about Chinese desserts. But I know lots of stuff, so hopefully I can be helpful or informative, or at the very least fun to watch. Right now what we're doing is we're rolling our rice balls around in a huge amount of sesame seeds, and that's just essentially to get that nice coating of sesame seed all around our rice balls, which now look something like this. And then we can head over to the fryer. So over on the stove, I have my wok heating up. This is maybe 12, should be about 12 ounces of fryer oil. I don't think it actually is, probably a little bit less than 12 because a lot of it has evaporated. And then what we're gonna do, so this is rolling at a very, very low heat. So this is at 300 degrees. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna par cook our Jian Dui for about 5 minutes. And what's gonna happen is because we're cooking it at such a low heat, it's essentially going to cook the dough without starting to brown anything. So we're going to get this really, really pale looking Jian Dui out of the first fry. And then we're going to pull it out and then double fry it. So if you've ever followed any of the fried chicken recipes that we've done, so a lot of the things like General Tso's chicken, honey sesame chicken, the gochujang chicken, all of the popcorn chickens, a lot of those things are double fried. The reason that we double fry is because it pulls moisture out of the first fry, and it really helps to do that on the first fry because it pulls a lot of moisture out. So what we're doing is we're doing the first fry at a very, very low temperature to draw that moisture out, and what it's going to do, it's going to create this nice crispy texture when we throw it back in for the second fry. So same properties, principles that we apply when we do things like fried chicken. We're doing the exact same thing, but today with rice balls. Yeah. Cool. So a couple of things that we want to pay attention. First thing that we want to pay attention to is set a timer, so that we don't lose track of the time. But the other thing that we want to pay attention to is that the Jian Dui rice balls, they're going to sink to the bottom of the wok, which is kind of inevitable. Ideally, you have enough oil where that doesn't happen. But if it is touching the bottom of the wok, we want to be careful about rotating those Jian Duis, because if they're touching the bottom, then they're eventually just going to start burning. And then you're going to have this weird black spot at the bottom. So we want to be very, very careful with that and make sure that they don't sit at the bottom of the wok for too long. Yeah. Cool. But also the first time that I did this, I think the first time I did it was maybe on the recipe, one of the original recipe video shots. But the first time that I did this, I didn't remember to rotate it properly, and we got little black spots at the bottom, and that's essentially where the rice ball is sticking to the bottom of the wok. So we want to avoid that from happening. But you will also notice, so there's not really a lot of violent sputtering or aggressive frying going on. That's because our fryer is sitting at 290 degrees, which is a very, very cold fry. If you've ever seen us frying chicken before, generally the fryer is going to sit at 350, 325, maybe 375, somewhere around there. It's generally a good place to be for your first fry or for your second fry. But essentially what we're trying to do is just draw a whole bunch of moisture out. It's also going to cook the dough quite a bit. So that's going to help us get a really, really nice crispy rice ball. So the first fry, it's very nice to do it on a low temperature because if you do it on too much of a high temperature, it won't cook all the way, or it will overcook in the first fry, and then by the second fry you'll get burnt chicken, which is not going to be good either. Same properties that we're applying today. If that fryer is too hot on the first fry, we're just going to burn our Jian Dui. Yeah. Cool. Hello to everyone just tuning in. My name is Wesley. This is Wu Can Cook. If this is your first time tuning in to one of these streams, we're here every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 PST with new recipes out over on the YouTube channel every Friday. So last Friday we came out with the recipe for the Jian Dui that we're cooking right now. It comes from a lot of Chinese street food. I probably have seen it more commonly in things like Chinese dim sum here in the States. It's probably one of the more popular things that come up in the dessert carts of dim sum, which maybe lots of people are missing the dessert cart. But the reason for that is because a lot of the things that are on the dessert cart of Chinese dim sum stuff are things that you probably don't recognize or maybe don't even know what they are at all. And this is probably one of them because it's a very weird looking thing. But essentially what it is it's a glutinous rice flour based rice ball, based dough ball, I guess. and it's wrapped around a sweet paste. Today we're using lotus paste, but you could really do it with any kind of paste that you want. I was just thinking that you could probably do it with chocolate, and it would work out really well. You have like a chocolate-filled Jian Dui. But essentially what we're trying to do right now is we have that lotus paste. It's inside of the ball. We need to cook the exterior of that rice ball first to make sure that everything doesn't like fall apart in the second fry. So if we were to just throw it into a first fry and just immediately start frying at 400 degrees, things would overcook and it would probably blow up, which is not what we want. So coming in hot. Yeah, where's the recipe? It is a good question. Thank you for asking. It's over here. So the recipes, they always live over on my YouTube channel. I generally remember to pin them on the YouTube channel when I start streaming. A lot of times I forget. But if you can't find it, they always live over on the YouTube channel. That recipe, it came out last Friday, and it kind of like walks through some of the like specifics of the things that we're doing. This particular one, it's actually a relatively easy recipe, so this is a pretty fun one. If you're like just getting into deep frying, this is a pretty good one to take a shot at because it's relatively forgiving because the first fry is at a very, very low temperature, so you can't mess things up too much. Unless you're like me and you forget to rotate them like that. So you'll notice there's those little black spots at the bottom of the rice ball. That's what happens when you forget to rotate them like me. But essentially what we're trying to do though is trying to like cook the rice flour at a very low temperature, and that's going to help us ultimately get to a nice crispy rice ball. So I'm going to pull these out. We're going to pull these out and rest them for the first fry. And then add our second batch back in. That's our second batch going in. And we're still sitting at a very low 300, and right now we're at like 310. That's a little bit too hot. So I'm pulling the top fryer back down a little bit. In the meantime, though, we can take a look at our finished first fry. Go. There we go. Cool. So a couple of things that we want to pay attention to. So what your Jian Dui should look like is something like this right now. So the contrast of our camera is doing some nice work for us right now. It's making these look nicer than they actually are. So they are relatively pale though. So what we are looking for is a relatively pale, mostly undercooked rice ball. It should look something like this one. Which is what we're going for here. So a couple of things that we want to avoid, stuff like this. This is what happens when you don't remember to rotate the rice balls. So what's happening when that happens is it's sticking to the bottom of the wok, and that's a big problem because if you don't remember to rotate them, they will eventually start burning. So rotate them like that. What was I saying? What we just did though, we just cooked these. So these have only been cooked on their first fry. So we're cooking them at a very, very low temperature, and that's why they look so pale and kind of a little bit unappetizing. Here's our second batch going in right now. We're going to give that another 5-minute par cook at that low 300-degree temperature, and that's going to help us get that nice crispy texture when we put it back in for its second fry. Would I recommend a flat bottom wok? Oh yeah, that's a really good question. So this is actually a round bottom wok. And the reason, so you'll notice, you can kind of tell, the reason that the wok is pointed in the wrong direction. So this is the handle of the wok right here. Here's my hand. The handle is going in this direction. The reason it's pointed that way is because I have a round bottom wok and it's sitting on top of a wok ring right now, which makes it like relatively stable. But without that wok ring, and also if you're not careful enough, it can totally roll off the stove, which is not fun. And really the main reason why I usually will use that wok ring is if I'm doing something like deep frying, where we want to be very, very careful about making sure that that thing does not roll off the stove. Because if it does roll off the stove and you're deep frying, then you're going to throw hot oil all over the kitchen, which is not going to be fun. So we're exercising lots and lots of caution today with this round bottom wok to make sure that it doesn't roll off the stove. One of the other good alternatives you can also, so the reason that I like deep frying in a round bottom wok, most people if you talk to them will deep fry in something like a Dutch oven For the exact reason is that because it's really, really stable, things don't roll around. You'll generally have a like more safe and secure wok for a deep fry because it's going to be really, really sturdy. It also has, because it has high heat retention, kind of stays in one temperature really well because the cast iron keeps the thing from changing temperatures too dramatically. The reason that I like doing it in a wok fry is because you can change temperatures really quickly. So that's really helpful because with something like we're doing right now, is if your oil is running too hot, you can turn the temperature down and it will actually change. If you do that in a Dutch oven, it definitely will not work. So that's really, really useful that's actually the main reason why I like deep frying in the wok. The other main reason, sorry, coming in hot, the reason that I brought that up is because the round bottom wok has a curved bottom to in the center, and that helps you deep fry in less oil. So today we're using, this was supposed to be, yeah, this is supposed to be 40 ounces of oil. I don't think that was 40 ounces of oil. It's probably closer to like 20 something because it just like have a lot. I think this is the 4th time I've used this oil now. So just a lot of it has been lost to evaporation. But because the wok is rounded at the bottom, there's more oil that kind of builds up at the center of the bottom, which means that you can deep fry it in a little bit less oil and get away with it. So if we were doing this in a full Dutch oven, that's like the full, like, I think my Dutch oven is 12 inches wide, that wouldn't be enough oil. It would be like really, really shallow. And you definitely would not be able to deep fry in that much oil because it wouldn't submerge the Jian Dui completely. So in our case, it totally works because of that rounded bottom. So if you are looking at flat bottom woks, I'm a big fan of flat bottom woks. I don't have one personally, but I always recommend them to other folks because if you are not familiar with like deep frying, or if you're not familiar with wok cooking in general, that's going to feel a lot more similar to other like frying pans that you've used. So if you're like more familiar with using like a standard like cast iron skillet or like a stainless steel skillet, it's going to feel a little bit more familiar because that's probably like that flat bottom is going to emulate what it feels like to be cooking in a skillet. So you won't be like totally fish out of water. The first time that I started cooking in this round bottom wok, it was a big learning curve because like things would like fly everywhere. And just like generally not having that flat surface it's like a weird thing to kind of navigate. It also has some of it has downsides too, which if you've ever seen me try and sear stuff, that's probably the biggest problem with the round bottom wok, is that because it doesn't have a flat bottom, it makes it harder to get stuff to sear to the sides because stuff doesn't evenly heat on those sides. This is like watching water boil. Yeah, basically that's essentially what we're doing. But essentially what we're doing for it right now is just waiting for that oil to come back up to temperature. So I guess we could look over here. Here's our finished Jian Dui. This is the second batch. This is the first side. This is the first batch. Here's our second batch. I did remember to rotate it this time, so they are not burned, which is nice. You'll notice also that the sesame seeds are nice and tacky. They're sticking to the rice balls really nicely, so that's really useful. They look like this. So what we don't want is this stuff. This is bad. We don't want that. Yeah. So what I'm doing right now is I'm raising my fire up. We're getting this wok up to 350, so we're sitting at like 300 right now because we've been cooking really slow. So that's going to be really useful. So what we're going to do is in our second fry, we're going to go a lot more brief, only about like 4 minutes, maybe even a little bit less than that. And then what we're going to do is shoot for that really, really deep golden brown color in our second fry. So our first fry, you can tell, yeah, I think you can definitely tell the contrast isn't doing too much. That the Jian Dui is really, really pale, so that's what we're looking for. We want these to be undercooked. They're still like expanded in size quite a bit because that flour is kind of expanding a little bit, but they're also still very, very pale, and I guess you could like generally would refer to this as essentially undercooked. Hey, that's Ham Charo. That's Ham Charo, everyone. Ham Charo is the hamster that eats ramen. He only eats ramen when you feed him, and when you feed him, he is only fed when people subscribe to the YouTube channel. So if you want to feed Ham Charo, he's very hungry. Please subscribe. Yeah, flat bottom wok is good for beginners, or it's good, like, it's a good starting point if you've never cooked in a wok before. So my first wok was the first wok that I cooked in was my parents' wok. and it was a flat bottom stainless steel, and it worked really well. It was like very familiar. I got used to it really well. It actually had a heavy bottom to it too, so it had nice heat retention too, which is really useful. And then the second wok that I had was actually a Teflon nonstick wok, and I had so much trouble with that wok. I was even cooking on it in a gas range too, and just like everything was mushy, and it just like would never get hot enough. And essentially, what was happening is I was just like constantly cooking at low temperatures because I was basically trying to cook stir fries in a nonstick skillet. So those things are the worst. Yeah, they're still soft. Yeah, they're essentially like soft and like fluffy. So definitely not crispy at all because they've been cooked at like crazy low temperatures. So they've been like 200 degree deep fry is like the low. That's the lowest fry that I've ever done. I've never seen a deep fry that low. Even when I double fried chicken, I don't think I have ever deep fried that low because I would be afraid of undercooking the chicken if I was trying to do that. Yeah, cool. I guess we could look at this while we wait for the wok to come up to temperature. So right now what we're doing is I'm waiting for the wok oil to come back up to temperature. We're at 340 and change, so we're nearly there. Once that wok gets up to 350, we're going to drop our Jian Dui back in. So we're going to go back in order. So we're going to use the first batch that we pulled out that has been resting for about 5 minutes now. And then we're going to put it back into the fryer oil at that hotter temperature. And that's going to give us that nice and crispy exterior. Hey, Hamcharo, thank you for subscribing. Yeah. I'm glad that we fixed Hamcharo. Hamcharo was not working for a long time. Alright. So our fryer is back up to temperature. I'm going to add these back to the wok here. And I think you can hear that. But we're getting this nice sizzle now. And that's because we're frying at a much hotter temperature. I'm pretty sure that you probably hear that. Maybe not. It's pretty quiet. And then what we're going to do, same thing that we were doing before. I'm still making sure to rotate these as frequently as I can remember to. Because now especially because we're at those hotter temperatures, we're definitely in the world of like, you could totally burn the bottom of those if you don't remember to rotate them. So if you don't want weird black spots at the bottom of your Jian Dui, make sure to rotate those things as frequently as you possibly can. Yeah. Cool. Hello to everyone just joining. My name is Wesley. This is Wu Can Cook. If this is your first time tuning in, we're here every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 PST with new recipes out over on my YouTube channel every Friday. So if you're watching on YouTube, that's the channel you're already on. If you're watching on Reddit, it's the channel that's at the bottom of the screen. We're working our way to 4,500 subs over there by the end of the month. So if you want to help us hit our subscriber goal, please go give it a subscribe. If you're not interested in that stuff, though, please don't subscribe. I don't know why people subscribe when they're not interested. It's a weird thing to do. Today we're doing a Chinese dessert that's called a Jian Dui, which is essentially a like glutinous rice-based flour ball that's wrapped around a sweet lotus paste. So today we're using lotus paste, but actually a Jian Dui is very commonly done. I want to say actually probably more commonly done with lotus paste, but actually when I was a kid, I most frequently had it with red bean paste, which is the same stuff that you come across in a lot of Chinese desserts. You see it in like things like zhongzi all the time, which is like a sticky rice cake. It's probably like the one thing that you see come up in most Chinese desserts most frequently. What we did here was we double fried them. So on our first fry, we cooked these at a very, very low 250 degrees. Actually, it was floating closer to 300. We were aiming for 250 though. But because we cooked it at that really, really low temperature, it helped us create this nice crispy exterior on our second fry. So right now we're into our second fry, which is frying at 370, which is a little bit too hot. And what I'm trying to do is I'm making sure to rotate these as much as possible. I also want to be relatively gentle to make sure that we don't knock off any of those sesame seeds, or knock off as many of those sesame seeds as we can, because they're on there pretty gently. So You also notice that the Jian Dui is starting to expand quite a bit, so it's gotten a little bit larger. I would say it's probably expanded by about like 50% at this point. So they were much, much smaller, like closer to the size of golf balls when we first put them in. And by the end of our second fry, we're going to have like much larger, probably closer to the size of almost a tennis ball. Yeah. Yeah. Also, if you're I'm sorry, I keep getting distracted. If you're looking for those recipes, they always live over on my YouTube channel, so those are out every Friday. So last Friday, we came out with the recipe for this Jian Dui, which was based off of, or loosely inspired by, a Jian Dui that you used to be able to find at a restaurant here in Oakland called Gourmet Delight. Sadly, Gourmet Delight does not exist anymore because it got shut down. Oh, I don't think it got shut down. I think it just didn't survive COVID, which kind of sucks. But I thought I'd pay homage to one of my favorite dim sum restaurants. I used to eat there a lot, at least. All right. So I'm pulling the first batch out from their first fry. And then I'm adding my second batch in for their second fry. And in the meantime, we can take a look at our finished Jian Dui. You'll notice that they're a lot more deeply browned and crispy, so they're way too hot to bite into right now. But they're definitely very, very crispy, so you poke them. I can't squeeze it because it's really, really hot. But that deep browning, it's coming from the second fry. You only can do that if you fry at hot temperatures. So again, I also have mentioned this earlier, but Jian Dui is a really great one if you're just getting like your feet wet with deep frying. If this is like a new thing for you, this is a really good one because it's really, really forgiving because the first fry is happening at very, very low temperatures, and the only time where you're really frying aggressively is right now on our second fry. So just like I was doing with the first batch, I'm rotating these as frequently as I can remember to do so. And the reason that we're doing that, we just messed up one of them, this one burned. The reason that we're doing that is because if you leave it at the bottom of the wok, what's happening is the Jian Dui is it's touching the bottom of the wok. And that's essentially going to just start like searing the bottom, which if we were making like a steak or if we were making crispy fried rice, that would be really great. For a Jian Dui, that's not so great because what it's going to do is it's just going to start burning, which is not fun. So I'm giving these a rotation once every like 30 seconds or so, about once every time I can remember to do it. We're also being very, very gentle with them at this point. I don't want to be too aggressive with the way that I handle these because it will start agitating those sesame seeds and they're going to start falling off, which is not good. Our first fry was for a little over 5 minutes actually. Our second fry is going to be relatively brief because we don't want. What we're trying to do is just develop a nice crispy exterior here. But the first fry was really long because it was at a really, really low temperature. We'll give these another minute. So we're going for our deep golden brown here at this point. So I'm going to let that go for maybe another 30 seconds or so. We're also paying close attention to how hot our wok oil is. It should not drop anywhere below like 350. We're aiming for 350, 375, and just generally trying to live in that temperature. Otherwise, we're going to start shedding heat, and we're going to end up with undercooked Jian Dui. All right. Yeah. So here's our finished Jian Dui. You'll notice now that we're not on our flat sheet anymore. This is on a cooling rack. That's actually really important. It's kind of a small detail, but it's a really important detail because if it's sitting on, before it was okay if it was sitting on the sheet because we're just gonna fry it a second time. But what's happening if it just sits on that flat surface is it's gonna start getting soggy on whatever portion that is sitting on the flat surface. So now we're on this drying sheet and that's just going to prevent anything from just sitting in a pool of oil. And that will keep our Jian Dui as crispy as it possibly can be. So 4 of these are too hot to handle. 1 of these, 4 of them will still be good though. Set the rest on the side. Let's cut one of these open. Here's what we got inside. They are very crispy now, so you can see this nice crispy texture out of the exterior. And that's going to help us complement that interior nicely. Go. Cool. So that's it. I guess I should try one. It's really hot. But definitely one of my favorite desserts. I also like overfilling them a little bit. I don't think any of them exploded. But what we're generally aiming for is we're trying to get like half of the quantity of what's inside. Should be half of whatever the dough exterior is. I usually like to overfill them because it has a little bit more sweetness to it. But if you're not careful, if you overfill it, it will explode. So be careful with that stuff. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, thanks everyone. This is a super easy one to take a shot at. So if you're new to deep frying, I would say this is probably one of my favorite things to recommend. Because it has a low margin of error. So if you fuck up, it's not going to be that big of a deal because there's still a lot of room to move around. So even if you burn it, so a couple of these are burned. Here's one. This one is very burned. This is definitely from sitting on the bottom of the wok. It's still okay. It's just that actually is probably going to be the most crispy one of all of them because it has that nice crispy bottom to it. It's a very forgiving recipe. So it's also really easy to do. You'll notice we only used 3 ingredients today. It was basically sesame seed, glutinous rice, and lotus paste. Oh, I guess brown sugar. So 4 ingredients in total. I basically bought all of the ingredients at the corner store. So really useful, especially if you're familiar with using glutinous rice. Cool. Yeah, thanks everyone. This is your first time catching one of these streams. We're here every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 PST. With new recipes out over on my YouTube channel every Friday. So this is a recipe for the Jian Dui that we did in the recipe last Friday that came out a couple of days ago. It kind of like those recipes tend to walk through the things that we're doing a little bit slower. So if you're trying to take a shot at the things that we're cooking, that's a good place to start. They also have all of the written recipes. They also live over there too. So if you're trying to find something to follow along to, that tends to work a little bit better than following these live streams because it's not 45 minutes long. Also, it's written down, so that's useful. Golden brown and crispy. Yeah, EBC. That's exactly it, Sarah. Yeah, thanks everyone. Cool. Yeah, so we're working our way to 4,500 subs by the end of the month over on YouTube. So if you want to help us hit our subscriber goal, please hop over and subscribe. Lots of fun new content coming up. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll be here doing some dishes. I'm probably trying to figure out what I'm going to eat for dinner. So probably not going to eat this for dinner. Yeah, I always forget the donations. If you're watching over on YouTube or if you're watching on Reddit and find your way over to YouTube, at the top of the screen you'll see a donation bar. We're taking donations. I never ask for money to stream. I just do it for fun. It's lots of fun to hang out with you guys. But I am always actively trying to make the streams better. Right now we're taking donations to replace the video capture cards that lead to this camera, the one that you're looking at right now. if you'll notice that it sometimes, very often, it goes a little bit blurry. Actually, it goes really blurry. I've noticed this a lot. It gets really, really blurry, especially when I'm chopping, and especially if I chop too fast. That's not because my hands are moving so fast that the camera can't catch it. That's because I'm using really cheap graphics cards, or capture cards. So right now what we're trying to do is raise some money to replace some of those cheap graphics cards. They're really expensive. They're about $100 a piece. And I also have 4 of them because there's 4 different cameras. 2 of them go to Reddit, 2 of them go to YouTube. So if you want to help us replace that cheap gear, please give it a donation. But if you can't, that's totally fine too. We're just here to hang. Cool. Thanks everyone. I'll see you tomorrow. What are we doing tomorrow? We are cooking. Oh yeah, tomorrow we're doing one of my favorites. Tomorrow we're cooking some pad ki mao, which is more colloquially here in the States known as Thai drunken noodles. It makes use of one of my least favorite ingredients, but also one of my new favorite ingredients right now, which is chow fun, which is a very, very thin rice noodle. So we're going to talk all about how to cook with chow fun, and mostly going to talk about how to not cook with chow fun and what not to do, because I have messed up chow fun many times. So, all right, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, everyone.
If you think that you don't know, never mind that you still don't love yourself. No, you can find it from somebody else. No, everybody's got to grow up sometime. Funny how we shoot the mood. Still, when we fighting, baby. Never mind. Everybody wants to be they still got streets, but they don't love me like they used to love it. And I'm reminded of how bad I used to want it. And yes, I still got streets, but more like a junkie of my 20s, and it's breaking me down. Want to be, baby, yes love all the time. You're as smooth as Tennessee whiskey. You're as sweet as strawberry wine. You're bad. Glass of brandy, darling, I'll stay stoned on your love all the time.